The Stepmother. One night, when I was 11 or 12, I was laying in my bed, struggling to get to sleep. My dad and his wife would insist that I keep the door open when I slept. As a child, I was also often afraid of the dark, so I would sleep with the lights on or with a cell phone gripped tightly in my hands. I could not shake the feeling that I was being watched. At that age, I had quite the fear of demons and things that go bump in the night. Sometimes I would sleep with a Bible because at that age I had not abandoned religion, and I thought maybe God could help me. At some point in the night, I grew very frustrated and sat up in bed. Beyond the light of my room, there was the darkness of the hallway and a figure standing in my doorway. I could barely make a sound, but I knew I was horrified. My father's girlfriend at the time was standing in the doorway watching me sleep. Her eyes were fixed on me, the way a predator watches prey. I remember looking at her eyes and seeing not a shred of humanity in them. It chilled me to the bone. Finally, I got my bearings. "Louisa?" I asked, almost confused. She turned around and disappeared into the darkness without a word. Startled, I gazed into the darkness a little while longer. This happened to me 2 more times during my childhood, where I woke up to my stepmother just staring at me from my doorway. Another time I woke up next to her at the foot of my bed. When I was 18, my relationship with my father continued to deteriorate, and finally he confided in me that he was afraid that when I was a child, that Louisa would murder me while I slept. He is still married to her, so Louisa and my father, let's not meet again. Why I am never going on vacation with my stepmother and father again. Back when I was 16, I had had a rough time with my father and his girlfriend for about a year or so. Long story that isn't really related to this, but I was trying to mend my relationship with my father because before all that, I had always been a daddy's girl. So when I was offered to go on vacation with them, along with my siblings and step-siblings, I said yes, after having thought about it long and hard for a month. We went to Turkey. We would live in an all-inclusive resort that was aimed at Scandinavians, so a lot of people we could talk to. The first few days we were perfectly fine. I was swimming in the sea and the pools at the resort. Only creepy thing was that there was a waiter who grabbed my hand and slipped me a napkin with a message of meeting up with him. He spent the next couple of days lurking around me every time we would go eat, until my father saw how uncomfortable I was and told him to buzz off. But one day, my stepmother decided that we should take a girl day of shopping, which meant my sister, my 2 stepsisters, her and myself. I didn't really like the idea, but I decided to come along anyways, so off we went to the nearest bazaar. We spent about an hour there until we got to a small place that looked sketchy as fuck, but they seemed to have some clothes that my stepsisters wanted to look at, so we went inside. I remember there were 3 men there, 2 older ones, and then a young one in the beginning of his 20s. He called himself Oscar. I remember because that's the name of my dog. We were seated and they brought out Turkish tea and to make us feel at home while we were looking at dresses and the like that they wanted us to try on. In the end, I was pressured into trying one on and went to the dressing room. While I was there, Oscar came and asked if all was well. Thinking it was just good customer service, I answered that it was fine. He must have misunderstood something because he slipped into the dressing room, and before I could do anything, he had me cornered with his hands on my cheeks and leaned in to kiss me. My body froze, despite my brain telling me to scream and punch him. It took me half a minute before I managed to pull back and tell him to stop. I pushed him out and changed faster than I ever have. Once I got out, I asked my sister if we could leave, whispering what had happened. She nodded and had to force my stepmother to get her ass in gear. Once out of there, my stepmother was scolding me for making a scene. My sister told her what had happened because I was a sobbing mess. Stepmother's reaction? She grabbed my arm hard and said, "Do not tell your father," before she let go and marched out of there. I didn't feel like leaving the room the rest of the vacation, and stupid as I was, I didn't want to piss my father off, so I didn't tell him. To this day, he doesn't know what happened. To this day, my stepmother is still pissed at me for ruining that vacation. So, Oscar from that creepy shop, I hope you get what you deserved, but let's never meet again. Never trust a psycho stepmom. This is my first Reddit post, and I'm sorry if it's so long, but there's a lot of backstory here. I've never really been one to post anything this personal on the internet before, but I think it's time to finally make these feelings known that I could never admit to a therapist. Not to toot my own horn or anything, but I'm a generally kind young woman that tries my best to see the good in people and just try to make it through life with friends instead of connections. But this woman, this sick fucking woman, almost changed my outlook on everything. Just some backstory. My father was once married to a very kind, funny, and religious woman. They had around 7 kids. He later cheated on her. They divorced, which was hard on her because she didn't normally believe in it, but she divorced him. And he remarried someone else. Another sweet, kind, and funny woman. That was my mom. They had 2 kids together, including me, making me the youngest, right now 18. As far as I know, 13 people, with the oldest for now being around 42. Unfortunately, he cheated on my mother with another woman. We'll just call her M. I know very little about her now. Before, I just thought she was just another nice woman that my father liked. But she was different from the others. She had a past that I still don't know, and she started showing her true colors as a sick, violent, manipulative, fucking psychopath. They would be together for a while, which later had my father divorce my mother. It wasn't too hard on me because I knew about the affair, and it would even be a discussion over dinner between just me and her. After they divorced, Mom even mentioned that they high-fived outside the divorce office and got some ice cream. So, all seemed well. My parents divorced, my father was happy, my mom had a job she was comfortable with. All seemed well, which is always when the shit hits the fan. Sometimes, me and my siblings would stay at my father and M's house. All would be fine, but if there was ever an argument between Dad and M, things would get scary. At first, it would be some strained talking, later yelling. After M starts yelling, we would go to either of the rooms or the basement, which was sort of like a man cave. The yelling would turn to screaming, which is when Dad would come upstairs and take us home. But I would still see the knife marks on his neck. M was abusive. The stupid thing about my dad is he would go back to her. Cut to years later, Dad was still with M, but my grandfather on my dad's side passed away from cancer. Dad needed to find a job to take care of my grandmother down in Texas because we lived in Wisconsin. This didn't sit well with M, but she did have to live with it. After a while, she went down to Texas with Dad when he invited her to stay. That never sat well with me, but if grandmother was there, maybe it would be fine. I still don't know what went down in Texas. After a long time, I never saw Dad. Sometimes we would get phone calls, so that was enough for me. But the day that I will always remember, the day my father passed away. It was just a week before my 16th birthday. He was driving to work to college. Unfortunately, a drunk driver was driving on the wrong side of the highway and head-on collided into my father's vehicle. Both drivers died on impact. I remember my mom waking me up, and when she sat on my bed, I knew something was wrong. The day was so quiet because there was nothing to say. Mom knew that we had to go down to Texas for my own father's funeral. We packed up and made the long drive from Wisconsin to Texas. It was the worst funeral I've ever gone to. It was run by M. She made the funeral start 5 minutes ahead, so his own kids were 5 minutes late. She got rid of the VIP seats for his kids. The pastor turned the funeral into a sermon instead of focusing on his family. Nobody knew we were his kids, and to kick us while we were down, there was a charity for his kids, known as Officer, my dad's name's, father of 9 children. People were donating, but M didn't tell us about it. We found out about it around a month after M claimed the money. She got every last penny that was supposed to go to his kids. Mom had to quit her job because it was 8 months behind on payment. My dad was gone. 2 of my siblings were going to college. I still had 2 more years of high school, and my mom had to take care of me and my 3 older siblings with no job. She later had to work 3 jobs just to take care of me and for tuition for my brothers. After a few years, my mom finally got a great job, which was ironically the same building my father used to work at as a police officer in Wisconsin. Although M tried to take that job from Mom because M also used to work there. I'm in college with my father's passing slowly going behind me. I wasn't even thinking about M until just last week. I was on spring break and my mom and I decided to go to a mall. We were talking about Dad and she told me something I'll never forget and never forgive. My father would go to many surgeries for his knee. One day, while living with M, he couldn't move because of the surgery. He needed to give my mom a check for child support because of how awkward it would be to have Mom go over there with M in the house. Dad asked if she could go out between 1 to 3 p.m. M wasn't happy with that. While my dad was bedridden and couldn't move, she actually pinned him down and choked him. My own father, who was stuck in bed, was being choked by a woman he married. She was arrested, but was paid bail and Dad still went back to her. Hearing that made me cry the whole drive there. It also made me swear vengeance on her. I wish to find her and let her know that family is not just a name. It's not just who you're born with. It's who you would die for. And if she knew that, she would never have fucked with mine. I'm sorry if this brought you down at all. I just wanted people to know this story and to let you know just because your parents like them, you need to make sure that person isn't some psycho. You need to do whatever it takes to protect not only your parent, but to protect your whole family.